Hello and welcome to the Defining Your Niche podcast, where we dive into alternative asset classes within commercial real estate, specifically self-storage and small bay flex. Really excited today to have Jonah Hall with me. I almost called you Jonah Hill, the little actor. Common mistake there. Jonah Hall with me of Cedar Creek Capital. We had a conversation a few weeks back, and I've been really looking forward to getting him on the podcast because they got some amazing things going on. He's hooked up with AJ Osborne and his Cedar Creek Capital team. And they're doing amazing, and I'm excited to dig into that, as I said, because this is not the easiest time to be doing really good in the acquisition side of self-storage. I always start this podcast the same way, though, so I want to ask you, this is such a niche, right? Nobody really sets out to end up in self-storage. How did Jonah Hall end up getting into the self-storage asset class?
All right. Yeah. No, that's interesting. Not the normal way, not if there is a normal way, right? I was working at the time for an oil and gas company that happened to have a real estate portfolio on the side, all triple net retail or double and triple net retail. So Dollar Generals, Family Dollars, Walgreens, strip centers, things like that. And I ended up converting a vacant Dollar General into a climate controlled facility in East Texas, and very much modeled after the Storage Express and 10 Federal model at the time. And it worked really well, better than expected. Being new to storage at that time, pretty early on, got hooked up with some of the tech that AJ used, and that kind of led me to where I am today, many years later. But tweaked on it and used that first facility as sort of a test bed for technology and all sorts of stuff, and ended up creating an operational model that just made me want to go scale it. So ended up doing more storage with that group, starting my own company, building that one up. And then, as you mentioned, joined AJ not that long ago to go build it from there here. So it's going to be fun.
What is it about this asset class that has historically made it, like you talked about this idea of it was way more successful than you expected to be? Obviously, we're going through a little bit of a nadir in the self-storage asset class today.
Sure.
Short-term issue. I don't think this is going to be a huge long-term issue. And we've talked about that a little bit. We could dig deeper on that side of it. But what is it about this asset class? Two things that I'm going to ask, a two-part question. Number one, that, for 40 years showed such amazing returns. And then two, the people within it. Like, there's such a unique set of people that are within this asset class. Like, I'm 51 years old. I've been in a bunch of different businesses in my life. Never encountered just the friendliness, the kindness, the willingness to work with someone that I've seen in this asset.
Oh, for sure. I'll touch on the last part first. I agree. I would not be in the industry today without people being really friendly. Everything a young, whatever I was at the time, 25-year-old kid needed to learn the industry was basically given to me on a silver platter by people that had gone before me. So, I have a big shout out to like Brad at 10 Federal, different people that like took me under their wing and showed me stuff and really informed my first facility so that it did well. Obviously in life, if you have a bad first experience, you may not try again. I had a great first experience, so that led me to try again. The industry, I think part of it is because it's a business and not just an investment asset class.
Yep.
And so I think when you get into some other asset classes, most of the people in the industry are simply developers or holders of real estate, and they don't understand the business piece. And I think that gives us a lot of shared excitement, but also maybe some shared trauma of being a business owner, right? You're actually operating a business on top of real estate, and that's unique, and that's fun.
Getting all those benefits of why people hold real estate as far as tax depreciation and asset appreciation over time, but at the same time, having that nuts and bolts entrepreneurship of like, you got to pull levers, you got to make sure this thing's working.
Yeah, of course, for sure.
So this leads me to a question about the state of the business in 2025. You talked about technology and adopting technology, and I got into this in 2021. I went to my first SSA show in Orlando in 2022. coming up in a couple of weeks. This will actually air while SSA is happening. So
Okay.
fitting.
Cool.
But even in the last couple of years, I watched a change in the amount of technology platforms that are at the show.
Oh yeah, for
Talk to
sure.
me a little bit about the evolution of technology in the space and where it's going with self storage.
Well, I got in right about when I think there was a major turning point in 2018. That was when I got in, and 2018 marked the introduction of digital locks, the introduction of some modern alternatives to storables products, which storable didn't exist at the time, but the
Yeah,
storage and SiteLink that is now one thing.
yeah,
Um, that those alternatives and those new things really created competition, which, as we know, in pretty much any business or asset class, is typically a good thing for the industry. And so we were able to, at the time, you can't even keep up. To your point, the industry is growing so fast. There's no way you could test everything all the time unless you had an army of people doing that. But at the time, we were testing literally everything that came to the market, and so we were able to try this with this and try that with that, and mix it all together and see what worked, and found a business model we really really liked. Um, but yeah, you're right. Around 21, 22, the show floors exploded with competition on property management software side, digital lock side, lien company side. I mean, insurance side. Everybody wanted to be in it, and obviously, it's because 2021 was the year of you know
60.
never before seen returns and everything else, and so people were just like flooding a new thing. But yeah, it's been interesting to see that progression. You mentioned, I'm partners with AJ, and AJ has been pushing that as well. He was one of the founding members of Tenant Inc., which is a software that we use internally, and I was also a very early guinea pig of some of their software, and it's been interesting to see that even though a lot of these things are off the shelf, it's not so much about any one individual product, although they can all be great in their own right. It's finding the right stack of technology you need for you to make it work. Until that time when someday everything is truly cohesive, which we're working on pretty hard internally. But today it's still some verticals. You got different pieces of technology that make that possible. But it's pretty awesome what it can do to your overall bottom line, to efficiencies, scalability, all that kind of stuff.
It's funny. I had Jennifer Downer of XBS Solutions, their
Mm-hmm.
operations lead, a few weeks back, and she was talking about how she wasn't a tech person. She came from a storage company, and how when she started to understand how difficult it is to get two different pieces of technology to communicate with each other, which made me think of that when you're talking about trying to get everything in one platform and
Oh
work
yeah,
together. Much easier to say than it is to make that actually accomplish. Where this leads me is overall with the industry, right? One of the things that I heard over and over in 2021, this is still a mom and pop industry. This is still a mom and pop industry. It's only been 3.5 years since I got in. It's not really so much a mom and pop industry anymore. And technology has been a big piece of that. It's hard to compete at this time if you're not. You mentioned trying to test everything, right? I had a conversation with Bo Agnella, who used to be at Extra Space. Now he's with Ghost Store. And he talked about Extra Space, laying out technology and being able to beta test in 400 stores, 201 and 200 in the other, right? That,
pretty cool.
and we smile. It is cool, but how do you compete with that if you're 10, 20 stores, right?
You really can't. You have to be willing to basically establish an R&D budget if you want to do that. I mean, we're definitely not A/B testing on 200 stores on each side, right? That's not possible. But we can A/B test on a couple of stores at a time, or maybe a handful, and really test the limits of different technology and stuff like that. I think we do have some advantages over the REITs in the sense that we can be more nimble and we can try more things more quickly and really roll things out more quickly. They're a big beast, and so they've got board meetings and everything else to come up to what they got to do. So I think we try to take advantage of that over the next few years, as a nimble player, and try to find the things that allow us to compete. A big thing for us was branding and things like that. What do we do to compete on a SEO and online presence level, things like that? Because if you're in a market where Extra Space and Public are your competitors, you're in a tough spot. I mean, as a mom and pop, you're pretty much shot. You might as well sell to somebody else unless you're going to figure it out pretty darn quick. And so, but yeah, you're right. It's not a mom and pop business anymore. It was. I remember quotes that first year I went to an SSA conference, maybe 2017, it was like 84% mom and pop. I mean, like now is it even 50? I mean, it's amazing how fast 7 years or something like that. It's completely changed.
It's funny going back to Bo Agnello, who's my favorite stats guy other than Armand Agajanians on LinkedIn.
Both
But
awesome.
Bo was talking, if you filter out everything less than 30,000 square feet,
Hmm.
it's like between 60 and 80% either REITs or big private equity
Yeah.
groups that are essentially competing with the REITs in the way they operate.
Right.
So no, it's not, and that's the next question that I guess I would ask for you. When my partners got into it at Say Storage USA, they started pounding the phones and they were able to buy 5 properties, wholesale a sixth property in a matter of a year and a half. This is late 19, 20, 21.
Hmm.
Um, that process of just getting a list and going and those owners now are getting called
Oh yeah.
10, 15 times a week. So I know your pipeline is full. We talked about this a month ago when we talked,
Right.
maybe that might have been 2 months now. Time starts flying as you get more gray in your beard. um, we talked about this. You guys have been really successful. How are you having success in this market where we're still having people's cap rate expectation tends to be a little lower than what underwriting
Yeah,
tends to
for sure.
show as a profitable deal? How are you guys able to find deals in this market environment?
Well, I hate to make it sound like for the new guy trying to get in that it's going to be hard for him, but a lot of it is relationship based, and we're talking about effort that goes back 5 plus years. Establishing relationships with brokers and with wholesalers and with callers and having lists that are that old. And so you've been the one that's calling them for 4 years and not for the last 15 months.
Yeah.
Some of that plays a part. Obviously, there is some just pure manpower kind of stuff going on too. We've got a lot of people calling and a lot of people making those relationships, and so that helps. Not just one guy trying to do it by himself. Um, but at the end of the day, you're rewarded for scrappiness too in any industry, right? I was shocked last year. I met this kid from Florida. He came up to one of AJ's conferences, and I mean, he's probably 25 years old, and he has more wholesale deals than he can do. I mean, it's just, but he's scrappy. I mean, that's all he does all day is work, right? And so you can be rewarded for hard work, but there is some tech that goes into it, and a lot of strategic marketing, and then of course AJ's got a little bit of advantage with his reach to reach out to people who have deals or have land or have things, and obviously some of it comes from that, but most of it is just long established relationships and a lot of hard work.
The work always wins, right? My son is doing door to door sales right now. He's 24 years old and has autism and applied for a job Indeed, told me it was data entry and turned out to be a door knocking company. And he goes and knocks on 150 to 200 doors a day. And he's
Mm-hmm.
not naturally a salesperson in any way, shape, or form, but he's having success. Why? As you said, sometimes it's just, are you willing to knock on that next door, right? Are you willing to call that next
That's
owner? And
right.
are you willing, and you said it, right? Not for a month,
No,
for two
not for
months.
yeah. You're rewarded for time. You really are. It's a slow progression. I mean, every business is. We're preaching stuff that everybody knows, but at the same time, you have to get after it and stick with it for years, not months.
I think that you say everyone knows that, but I think we have this culture in our country these days where we see someone like AJ who's achieved so much success and everyone thinks it was overnight. The reality is he's been in this game for a long time and he didn't
Yeah.
have a mastermind with thousands of people and YouTube
No.
videos with tens of thousands of views in a matter of weeks. It
No.
took a
Not
long
at all.
time for him to build that
Years.
capital up.
It took years and consistency. A lot of consistency. I mean, I his studio is just over there, and I mean he's in there 4 nights a week filming content. I mean, it takes consistency, right, to build that sort of not only just a following if that's the thing, but just the ability to uh, get the word out. Whether you are raising capital, whether you're looking for deals, whether you're educating people, whatever it is, like you got to be consistent for a long period of time.
How attractive is that for you to enter into a relationship with someone when you see that, you're talking 15 years he's been at this. and
Hmm.
and you see, like, you know what you're getting into because the track record's right there in front of you and it's documented because it's on YouTube every week. Not
Right.
only the facilities that he has,
Right.
right? But I guess, maybe it's easy sometimes for people to over exaggerate what their portfolio really looks
Oh
like,
yeah, for
right?
sure.
Whether or not they're super leveraged, whether or not they own things free and clear, like that's easy to kind of, hey, I manage $2 billion of assets. Well, I owe 2.5 million to the bank, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
game gets played in the real estate space. We know
For
that.
sure.
How cool is it for you in entering a relationship with him to say, hey, I know exactly what I'm getting here?
I think it's. I'll answer it this way. I feel like, uh, yeah, everyone's guilty of that. I mean, AJ included, right? We all do that. Like we find the right stat for whatever we're trying to talk about, and that's normal. But at the same time, AJ is an honest guy, and or I wouldn't be his partner, right? And so I see that a lot in the way even his videos work. He's like, "Hey, we just messed up over here, right? And here's what we learned about it." And having so much history and content allows you to point back and go, remember when I said that? Like I was wrong, and then be able to create more content based on what you've got wrong. I think it's really really cool because it gives you a baseline of trust with the industry and with investors and with all sorts of people, and really establishes you as somebody that really knows what they're talking about because you've learned it the hard way too, not just a bunch of success overnight, but you've learned both the wins and the losses over that period of time.
I was having that conversation with Buddy Morgan this morning, a developer down out of Oklahoma, and there's going to be losses, and it's the people that aren't afraid of that and that accept it going into it, right? He said something which stuck with me. It's impossible to mitigate 100% of the risk on any deal, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Especially if you don't have a good basis. I mean, you got to buy right. That's a kind of historical thing people say, but it's so important to buy right. If you have the wrong basis, it's really hard to overcome no matter what levers you pull after that.
Yeah.
And we've seen that even on assets we own today, right? We just like, oof, it felt like a deal in the moment, but that was 2021, and 2021 was not a good year to buy in hindsight. And so it's
April of 2022 happened, and Jerome Powell decided to open his mouth and change the market pretty drastically.
exactly, exactly. So I mean, there were a lot of people buying in 21 that are either no longer in the industry because they just completely messed up, or they are going out of the business, right?
Yeah.
Or they just had to sell their asset early and take a loss and move on. The good thing about being in a team this size is you can absorb those things. You can cover those if you have to. You can put your own money back on the table if you have to. You make it right, and that's a cool thing to be able to do. I started kind of like AJ syndicating deals, and I wasn't in a position to make it right, personally. Like I didn't have the money to fix it if it went wrong.
Yeah.
Here, we have that ability to make it right if we have to, and that's huge. I think it really goes a long way into again establishing trust and being in it for the long term, long haul.
This leads to a great question for me. I know you guys operate on every level, right? You'll buy value adds, you'll buy value adds with expansion, you'll do development deals as well. And I come out of the development side of it. That's where I've spent all of my career pretty much. Not ever done a lot of value add acquisition.
Okay.
There's a lot of I'm going to use Radius, and shout out to Noah Star and Tract IQ and the people at Store Track too. But I use Radius Plus pretty regularly, and there's
Sure.
a lot of blue dots that
Yeah.
have been sitting on Radius. And for those of you that know Radius, right, blue dots is stuff that's development pipeline.
Right.
There's a lot of blue dots that have been sitting there for 2 going on 3 years now, and I'm interested to pick your brain a little bit. I think a lot of those deals are in a situation where the developer can't afford to sell them because they've got to admit to their
That's exactly
LPs that they can't sell it for enough money to pay back the LPs. And
right.
so they're in this position where it's kind of like sit and hold your breath and wait and hope that someday we can get it out of the ground. There's a question coming here where are we going to see a situation in storage where we start to see a string of distressed assets being sold? Or are we kind of past that point?
Oh, I think it's still coming. I think this summer's we're gonna see more of it. I don't know that we're at the beginning of it. We're probably closer to the end of it, but at the same time, it's not over. We're seeing it pretty consistently.
Yeah.
I'm seeing it across the board in a lot of different situations. Development plays where the guy finished, but he can't afford to keep it long enough to
You can't even
make any
month them
money
off
on it.
holding
He's got to
costs.
just walk away for costs, basically.
Yep.
I see it with people who can't even get it out of the ground, as you mentioned. I see people that wanted to hold it all the way through lease up, but they're 20% full and having to sell it early and take a loss there. All different situations, and we see them all the time. I mean, we bought one earlier this year where the developer intended to sell it immediately, but because of the situation, he couldn't get the price he needed. He decided to hold it on, and spend 9 months trying to sell it. But by the time he got to month 9, he's like, I'll seller finance it. I just got to get it off my books, right?
Yeah.
And so that we got a great deal out of it, which is great. But it sucks to be him in that situation because he wanted to sell it at CO, and the market changed, and it was no longer viable to sell it at CO and make the returns he thought he could get. And so anyway, he held on a little too long, probably, but we all do that sometimes.
And we talked about it earlier. People make mistakes. I guess the question that follows up with that is that, you're talking about, I don't know, you're building a 100,000 square foot Class A storage facility. You're lucky if you get it out of the ground for 10, 12 million all in these days. It
Right.
only takes, as you said, like when you first started and you were syndicating deals, like you couldn't come up. And this is an interesting change that's happened in the last 2-3 years as LTCs and debt service coverage ratio have forced higher percentages of equity in deals.
Mm-hmm.
We're no longer talking about going and raising $1.5 million, $2 million for a $10 million deal. Now we're talking about raising $4 million, $5 million on a $12 million deal.
Exactly.
Your commitment to your equity, your LPs, or however it is it's structured, you have significantly more of their skin in the game.
Way more.
People,
Way more.
yeah, right, like
It's
double plus.
Yeah.
Because, and again, going to the cost of capital and the cost of debt now, it's only forcing more equity coming in because you got to, and you talked about it. When I first started in 2021, 2022, we were underwriting stuff to a 24-month lease up.
Right.
Because that's what was happening. Now, in hindsight, that was a tragic mistake. We shouldn't have been doing that. We should have been thinking more along the lines of 36 months, and we were underwriting at 5.5% construction loans.
Yeah.
Well, those numbers look a lot different today, and it doesn't take many $12 million deals. I don't care how wealthy you are. You start losing $3, $4, $5 million on a deal, it doesn't take long for you to be behind the 8 ball.
Exactly. No, you're right. And the cost of capital is a killer right now because not only is the cost of financing so high, but your cost of equity is higher too because people want to mitigate the risk on their equity plays.
Yeah,
And so you kind of got a double whammy situation. So the deals have to be way better than they used to be
100%.
to get, to be able to mitigate any risk and know that you've got some, air, room for stupidity, I think is how AJ likes to say it,
Great way.
your stupid risk. But I think that is key. Thankfully, in hindsight, I've always been a little more conservative in my underwriting.
Yeah.
I've always been exiting at 7 caps when the market was at a 6 cap and things like that, and so that helped a little bit. But despite that, it's still a really different time to be underwriting deals right now.
Yeah, listen, when your construction loan and is at 9.5, 10, 11, for people to 11,
Right.
and you're now places taking 48 months to get to economic stability. Certainly,
Sure.
your time period of having to keep paying every month,
Mm-hmm.
the asset not cash flowing for you, significantly longer, and it's challenging people. It's interesting
It's
to pick
happening here too. We're seeing it. I mean, I don't hide that. We see that with assets here that we've done in the last few years, especially deals that were done in 21, and they were on a construction note at 4, 5, 6%, and now that note's coming due. Right now, you got to refinance at a much higher rate, and it hurts. It just extended your timeline to break even by 6 months, a year, right? And that was never planned for. And so you either got to figure out where you're going to inject some capital or get creative because it's gonna be a painful, kind of code up and be ready for it. It's gonna be tough.
Interesting. We could keep going down that road for so long, but I want to switch things up a little bit. And as
Okay.
we're coming up close to the end of a half hour that I try and promise people to stick to,
Sure.
prognostication. We're February of 2025. Obviously, there's been an administration change, and that's brought some pretty significant policy idea change. Whether or not stuff gets through Congress or not, we'll see.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
how do we see things playing out over the next couple of years? Because we've been in a prolonged for storage, which had never experienced negative revenue growth in 40 years before last year. This isn't, we're 2 years now where we've seen that the REITs, as I said, they just, Tuesday they came out with their year end report. Pretty significant drop in NOI year over year.
Mm-hmm.
Does
Sure.
this trend continue for another couple of years? Do you see it starting to soften a little bit? What do you see happening over the next couple of years in the storage market?
I'm no macroeconomic expert, but AJ likes to be, or at least likes to try, and he's way more on top of it than I am, so I let him do that thing. I definitely am not underwriting that rates are coming down. Like that would be dumb. I hope they do, and I have a hunch that they might come down a little bit. They won't go down to what they were in 21 or something or 20, but um, I do think that we are in a buy season. At least we are. Cedar is very much believes that it's still time to buy. If you're going to basically get out or start growing, is kind of the mindset we have. It's adapt or die is sort of the feeling we have as a company right now,
Yeah.
and for a couple of reasons. I think one, we're seeing. Sorry for my light. My office has motion sensor lights. Um, the We're seeing that the 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 market has similarities, though obviously very very different from the industry standard. But the market has similarities to a post recession, and so we feel it's the time to buy. And so we believe that enough that we're even disposing of certain assets to create capital and dry powder so we can go do some things. We're really making some big effort pushes right now to create the pipeline and the capital needed to go grow. Like I want to say 10x. That's obviously some major big hairy audacious goals there, but that's basically the goal is a 10x over the next 5 years, with a lot of that growth being stuff we buy in the next two. um, and so we're really focused on that. And I don't know if you've seen this thing. I won't spend a lot of time. We don't have a ton of time, but this is AJ's little chart that has been talking about. I'm sure you can go find a video on it,
Yeah.
but just sort of showing how the market has at a macro level has seen kind of never before seen shifts. And yes, you can keep going right now, but you got to really be bought in. It's no longer success by accident, you know. And we had some people that got lucky and actually made it through by accident. And it's basically batten down the hatches and become an excellent operator and an excellent developer and an excellent everything, or go ahead and exit the market because it's not the market for you anymore. That's kind of the way we feel about it. I'm not sure everybody agrees with me, but that's how we're taking it, and I think we'll honestly be rewarded for it in here in a couple of years. So
I could talk to you for another half hour and keep digging, but that's such an excellent idea to stop on, and quite frankly, echoed by some people who I really respect in the industry. So you're saying something that I don't think enough people recognize, quite
yeah,
frankly.
sure,
Um, you know, I guess I would say that right now it seems clear that there's going to be winners and there's going to be losers
yeah,
over the next 4 or 5 years.
yep,
And the winners they're gonna be people that operate at a high level. You're not, you said it, and it's such a fantastic thing. This is no longer a time when you buy a storage facility, throw new signage up, throw some SEO at a budget, and
yep.
all of a sudden you made it 3.5x for your investors. We're beyond that season of this asset class, I
That's
think.
over. That's over. At least for the foreseeable future, that's over. Yeah.
Jonah Hall, president of Cedar Creek Capital. Can't thank you enough for coming and joining me for a half hour. I got to throw myself under the bus. I was late. I thought we were at 11
No,
o'clock and
you're
we
good.
were at
You're
10:30.
good.
Jonah was super
No
patient
worries.
with me, waited 5 minutes for me to show up, which I'm very, very thankful for. Somebody wants to get a hold of you. They got deals. They want to put stuff in front of
Yeah.
you. How does someone get a hold of Jonah Hall? The best and easiest way for you?
Oh, me personally, it's probably LinkedIn. I'm not super active, but I do try to post every week or so on LinkedIn, and I do check my messages on LinkedIn. So reach out there. If you're reaching out to Cedar, there's lots of ways to get a hold of Cedar, obviously, but also LinkedIn is a great place to start. We're pretty heavy on the online presence around here, so
Yeah.
we'll hear from you if you reach out anywhere, Instagram, YouTube, whatever, it'll get to me. So feel free to try to do that. We are always looking for deals, obviously raising money all the time too, but But if you just want, to chat or learn something, that's also kind of up our alley. So reach out. That'd be great.
One of my favorite parts of this asset class, so many people like yourself that are willing to help people, even if there's not maybe an immediate return. So appreciate that about you,
For
Jonas.
sure.
So appreciate you taking the time to come and join us. That's it for this week's episode of the Defining Your Niche podcast. Thank you to the guys at PropRise. Speaking of technology rolling into the asset class,
Mm-hmm.
they're unbelievable at helping source deals. They've been such a great supporter of the podcast. Want to thank them. I am your host, Thaddeus Campbell. He's Jonah Hall, president of Cedar Creek Capital. We'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, Thad. Me personally, it's probably LinkedIn. I'm not super active, but I do try to post every week or so on LinkedIn, and I do check my messages on LinkedIn. So reach out there. If you're reaching out to Cedar, there's lots of ways to get a hold of Cedar, obviously, but also LinkedIn is a great place to start. We're pretty heavy on the online presence around here, so
Yeah.
we'll hear from you if you reach out anywhere, Instagram, YouTube, whatever, it'll get to me. So feel free to try to do that. We are always looking for deals.